I'm kind of interested. This is the top recommended video for me right here, is Matty's review of Mirage. I kind of want to see what he thought about it. Because for those of you not familiar with Matty somehow at this point, Matty's a friend of the channel. He's a very good dude. I think he makes good stuff. He's on a mad grind. We've done collabs before and stuff. We usually butt heads on things. And mainly, like, he's a big BGS fan, and when we've done videos before, he tends to be a glass is half full, whereas I'm like, the glass is just, it's half filled. Like, I don't care how you twist it. It's just, it is what it is. So we usually butt heads because I don't give Bethesda the benefit of the doubt. His channel has primarily been built on Bethesda stuff, so that's usually been a place where we've had a little bit of, you know, good fun conflict. Nothing aggressive or anything. And I think Matty in general is a very good guy. I think he's a good guy. We just tend to disagree on some video game stuff every once in a while. But I don't know what his thoughts are on Assassin's Creed Mirage. So I'm kind of intrigued to hear what this is. My only thing that I hope this is not is that it's not one of these reviews where people are like, oh no, it's like it plays like an Assassin's Creed game from 10 years ago, therefore it's bad, because that is like the whole freaking point. This is one of the rare cases in video games where a game being outdated or feeling outdated is actually a good thing, because modern Assassin's Creed games are so out of it compared to old school games. Like, old school fans of this franchise just want games that feel like they did 10 years ago, even if that means they're outdated. So as long as the complaints are not that it feels like an old school game, I am interested in this.
Assassin's Creed Mirage review. Big shout out to Ubisoft for providing the review code about a week ahead of the embargo lifting, so I had enough time to go through this one and let the thoughts digest, because it's not too long of a game. Now, Assassin's Creed Mirage is one where the hype is really built up because it's about returning to the roots of Assassin's Creed. I have
which is dangerous because hype makes you stupid, right? Boys and girls, hype makes you stupid. Everybody say it together. Don't be hyped over anything. He's also known for clickbait titles. I've seen some people, you know, bring that up before. I've never seen him do anything that's like particularly clickbaity. Maybe I'm just not familiar with it. I don't know. We all, like, the whole point of YouTube is to bait people into clicking on your videos. Like, that's the point. I think the problem is when it's like deceptive, when you just straight up like lie about what's in the video and get somebody to click on it under false pretenses. And if you did that, then yeah, I think that's bad clickbait. Maybe I've missed something. I don't think I've ever seen Matty do anything like that. I'll try to defend him there. I don't think he's a particularly clickbaity guy like that. What's the name of that guy that does the GTA 6 stuff where he just straight up makes things up and makes a 20-minute video about it that does 1 million views? I forget his name. Maybe we shouldn't even say it, but there's a guy out there that makes those videos where he'll just make something up, like, rumor says that GTA 6 is actually going to be announced 3 days before the day after tomorrow, which is yesterday. You know, it's already been announced. Confirmed. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, but he'll make these videos that do 1 million views, and he's making very, very good money with it. I don't think Matty's ever done something like that. So, you know, if people give him crap for clickbait, I don't think that's I wouldn't think that's fair, because there's some insane guys out there.
Many thoughts on it, but ultimately I was not in love with what Mirage brought to the table, and I'll explain why. So let's not delay any further. If you're new here and you're into the day one reviews, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Let's start off with the story.
Also, shout out to Matty for the, oops, I actually muted it, for the improved setup. I think this is in his new house. He just moved like 6 months ago or something, or like 3 months ago. I don't remember. We were going to do a collab, but he was moving and had some health issues, so we ended up just canceling it. But yeah, he's actually got like his light balanced really nicely. He's got the nice depth of field built up here. Love it. Nice, Matty.
Story. You play as Basim, a character who should be familiar to those of you who have played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, as he's one of the main characters in that game that Eivor interacts with. That may beg the question, do you have to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla to appreciate Mirage?
No, God, no. I mean, maybe to appreciate it. If you play Valhalla, you'll probably appreciate Mirage more. That's true, but you should never play Valhalla. I mean, I play it for like 20 hours, then give up on it. Don't try to finish it. You'll you'll drive yourself crazy. Also, am I weird? Am I misremembering, or is this like UI really big? This looks like it's played on a mobile phone or like at 720p. Am I just misremembering how big the UI elements were? Because this seems like aggressively large text. Oh, maybe it's Steam Deck. Oh, maybe it's Steam Deck footage. Maybe, I don't know why he'd be capturing on Steam Deck. That'd be weird. Let's see. He was initially very dismissive of the criticism against Starfield. TBH, I kind of stopped watching him after that much after that. And then he walked back some of the things in a later video. Weird. Hype makes you stupid, man. When you're hyped for a game, you got to be very, very careful, because you end up saying some silly stuff. And it's like that guy Colt who was saying that Redfall was set to be the biggest release from Xbox before Starfield. We all know how that ended. Like, he was encouraging people to get the Bite Back edition to support the game and everything, and Redfall ended up being a total unmitigated disaster. So yeah, you should never be surprised that like fans of a particular company or genre end up making excuses for crappy stuff.
Now, Ubisoft will tell you no, but I disagree. It's always been like this. To appreciate Unity to its fullest, you have to beat Assassin's Creed Rogue. It helps. To soak in all that AC Origins story built, it helps to have some familiarity with the narratives of past games. Revelations can be played on its own, but you'll definitely want to play AC 1, 2, and Brotherhood to fully absorb all of Ezio and Altair's story. Anyway, you get the point. To fully appreciate everything that Mirage is doing here, it's in your best interest to at least know what happened in Valhalla, no matter what Ubisoft says. It's also worth being aware of the timeline here. This is about 800 years after AC Origins, 11 years before Valhalla, and around 300 prior to Assassin's Creed 1. Now, for those who are unintroduced to Basim, you haven't played Assassin's Creed in a while, or you skipped out on Valhalla, he is a former thief growing up in Baghdad who eventually joins the Hidden Ones. The trick with this game's narrative is playing off what you know about the main character. If you got to the end of Valhalla, then you know what I'm talking about. Now, the problem here is twofold. For starters, many people fizzled out of AC Valhalla because of fatigue that they felt from the game's bloated content structure, and
because the game is 7 years long. It just never ends, dude. It's like so frustrating. Just never freaking ends. It's the game that goes on forever.
I say that as someone who actually really liked the game, even if it's kind of like a controversy.
Oh no. See what I mean? Like, sometimes Maddie and I just butt heads on stuff. I've called Valhalla a travesty of open world design. I think the game is atrocious in a lot of ways. There's just a lot of really stupid things that they do. And yeah, I will die on that hill. Fallout 4, I sort of changed my mind. I think if you play that game not as an RPG, but you play it as like an adventure shooter, you can have a really good time with Fallout 4, and I'll admit that. I don't know if there's a way to play Valhalla and have a genuinely good time over the course of its campaign. Like, it is so repetitive and dry. It just gets really tough to finish it.
Commercial take nowadays. I thought that AC Valhalla was a very fun game to play. Was it a Assassin's Creed game? No, but as I put in the tagline of my review for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, this is a series that eventually traded in its identity for innovation. But now we're going back to the drawing.
Traded its identity for innovation. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that concept. It triggers the crap out of me having a Fallout branded, like, I like the thumbnail, but it's funny seeing a Fallout thing on an Assassin's Creed thumbnail.
Drawing board with Mirage. Still, even if what I just said doesn't apply and you actually completed Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the primary issue is Basim's character growth is incredibly stagnant and boasts some of the worst writing from Ubisoft yet. There are moments that could be used to build tension and elevate characters near Basim, but any opportunity that presents itself is thoroughly squandered. There's actually one point in the game where Basim links up with a character that he has some history with. Things aren't cool between these two, and they left on awful terms, so they're very much at complete odds with one another. They have this chance encounter, they meet up, and you're thinking, this is the start of where we're going to build some tension among characters, right?
I know exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, you think that they're like setting it up for a big quest line where you slowly rekindle your friendship and everything comes back together. It resolves itself in like 90 seconds.
Wrong. They just do nothing but hug it out and say, hey man, no sweat. It's there I recognized, okay, any attempt to create some sort of suspense for this game's narrative is out the window. So the main meat of the story comes down to two areas. For starters, Basim and the Hidden Ones are hunting down members of an order. You will track down cases, which eventually provide clues to identify members hidden within this order and proceed to take them out to eventually get to the head of the entire order. So yeah, this may sound familiar if you played Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You know how they had this whole cultist system in that game? It pretty much takes that system and builds an entire game around it, where you're going to be scouring for clues in a mission-like structure, reading notes, talking to people, interrogating them, sneaking around, eavesdropping. We'll talk about more of that in the gameplay segment. And as you gain these clues, you'll find out who done it, who is that member of the Order and take them out. The other component of the story is that there is a spirit haunting Basim. This is probably the single most intriguing element of the story. However, the only caveat with it is, again, knowing AC Valhalla's story, a lot of the tension is lost here. And it doesn't help that those surrounding Basim are equally uninteresting and poorly written. But honestly, this may not matter to anyone. If you ask me what I prefer in this series, whether it be a really interesting main character or getting the setting right, I would go with the setting, because the setting defines what activities we're going to find in this world and even the rules of the gameplay, since they must adhere to a particular time period. I mean, we tolerated Jacob Fry in Syndicate to enjoy what may have been Ubisoft's most impressive effort yet in the series when it came to its world, parkour, combat, activities. I just feel the game, in hindsight, and I was very lukewarm on it, but I think it was underappreciated.
I will agree there. I will agree. And I actually think the Fry twins get a lot more crap than they deserve. I freaking think he's recording footage on a Steam Deck. I think, well, no, this is a PlayStation layout. What is happening? I've played Syndicate recently, and I don't remember it looking anywhere near this bad. Like, look at the draw distance. Is this PS4 footage? It might be. Like, this is very, very low quality settings, if anything. Like, I mean, maybe the PS4 Pro version of the game looked like this. Yeah, but man, I don't know. I don't remember it looking anywhere near this bad. Oh, it's the bad PS5 port, probably. Okay. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't remember it looking that bad, but I've gone back and I've tried it recently. We're going to do a video on it because I think Syndicate is often given a lot of crap, and it's sort of the forgotten Assassin's Creed game. Very few people bring it up. Everybody brings up, bring back Unity style parkour, bring back Unity like mission structures and stuff. Syndicate did a lot very well. And the interesting thing that they did with Jacob and Evie Fry is Jacob, he's the rash, rough and tumble melee fighter. And then Evie is the stealth-focused assassin. So you can choose which one to go on some of these missions with. Some missions require both of them in tandem. And they each have their own skill trees and abilities and loadouts and stuff. And it was a really good way, I think, of providing the melee combat stuff that they wanted to put in the game to appeal to certain players and also retain the stealth stuff. And it seems that they're actually returning to this for Assassin's Creed Red, which will have, allegedly and reportedly, 2 different protagonists, again with one focused on stealth, one focused on melee. So it seems they're returning to it. Some people said that Jacob was just kind of cringy. I had never found him cringy. I found him like brash, certainly, but I didn't find him cringy in the same way that like I found just all I can think about is Redfall, because I just played that yesterday and it was so terrible.
So can Assassin's Creed Mirage rise above the narrative criticism? Let's talk about the gameplay. One of the big selling points for Assassin's Creed Mirage is the RPG elements that were injected into the series, beginning with Origins, are now being stripped out as the franchise aims to get back to its roots.
Pedantic correction. The franchise is not trying to get back to its roots. This particular spin-off game is trying to get back to its roots. This is why precision matters here, because people might hear that and think that these future Assassin's Creed games are going to be Mirage, but bigger. No, this was an experiment that started as a DLC that turned into something a little bit bigger than that. The franchise isn't trying to return to its roots. This particular spin-off game is trying to return to its roots. So just to be very precise.
You're going to be level gated from assassinating some guard as it instead registers as a critical hit. You just stab them and boom, they're dead. Fun times, right? So in the stretch from AC Origins to Valhalla, the series transformed from stealth assassination series into an action RPG franchise that took you to the more interesting points in human history. Getting back to the series roots also means a more narrow focus for the franchise. While you could definitely spend a lot of time in the likes of AC2, Odyssey and Valhalla felt overindulgent in its breadth of content, walling you off from just beelining the story until you hit a particular level in the game. Less is more, and this is why the 360 PS3 era was goated, but that's a conversation for an entirely different video. If it wasn't obvious from what you've seen of the game thus far, Mirage uses Assassin's Creed 1 as its biggest touchstone, from its Middle East setting all the way to some of the mechanics that you see in the game, like the return of the notoriety system. They even have a filter for AC1 fans that puts that cool blue tone into the visuals. So yeah, heavy AC1 vibes here. Getting caught by guards means that you can actually rip down posters with your face on them, or even pay off people to start spreading the good word about you once more. Blending into crowds gets a major focus in this game, as there are stealth segments fully dependent on this mechanic, where it actually felt like a fresh change of pace as you hide in plain view rather than sticking to the shadows. Now, I didn't think using Assassin's Creed 1 as a touchstone meant to so literally imitate its greatest flaws too. I have a soft spot for AC1, no doubt about it. You know, the beginning of a fantastic series, even through its ups and downs. I love Assassin's Creed. But yeah, its open world activities were not the most engaging. Doing something like chasing down flags as a means of engaging the player in its parkour system was a boring activity, and while at the time tailing targets and eavesdropping was fun and fitting for the series, we've learned by this point that it drags the experience and feels quite repetitive. Well, Assassin's Creed Mirage brings all of those feelings straight back and leans really into that part of the series roots, which may be music to your ears, quite frankly. For me,
yeah, I mean, as long as he's aware and like is acknowledging this, I'm fine with it. I won't like poke fun or anything. But yeah, it brings back the good and the bad of those old school games, because there's a reason we moved on from a lot of this. There's a reason that Ubisoft shifted gears, and I know this might make some like Assassin's Creed fans cringe at the thought, but the truth of the matter is, like, Ubisoft changed their strategies and design philosophies because they needed to. They changed it because these games weren't selling the numbers they used to do. They could sell a lot, or rather, they were selling the numbers they used to do. They weren't selling more than they used to do. They weren't growing at the pace they wanted them to. And so they started to shift, and they shifted towards this open world adventure style of game, which led to crazy revenue records being broken. And so they found success in that because more players were playing the games, and that's what they look for. And the reason that the broader player base and the broader gaming community shifted away from those old school Assassin's Creed games is just because they started to grow outdated and tired, and people were just tired of it. They had played that before. They wanted something different, something bigger, and something badder. And that's what Ubisoft was able to deliver with these, like the Unity Onward games. And so there are things that they used to do that nowadays would not be tolerated and would be frowned upon, such as trailing missions, such as the kind of slow and clunky social stealth stuff. But for old school Assassin's Creed fans that are playing this specifically for that trip down memory lane, this is actually a net benefit. They understand, like, yeah, it's clunky and there's a reason we don't do this anymore, but it's fun to play a game like this in this franchise that's, you know, been doing things very, very differently. It's cool to see a return to its original style of design, even if a lot of that is clunky and maybe not what we would consider to be ideal for modern audiences. But as long as he's acknowledging that, like, yeah, sometimes that, like, for some people this is great and for other people this is a net negative, that's all I'm really looking for.
I don't mind the tailing and eavesdropping. I kind of enjoy that, but it's the boring world activities that really drag things down. And that's not even accounting for unique problems it has on its own. The primary open world activity in Mirage are contracts that you're going to pick up at a hidden one bureau, where you may quickly assassinate a dude, or race someone, or steal something. You know, real basic stuff that's quick in and out content, but that's not even in the fun palate cleanser kind of way. It's just mundane, straight up. There are also what's called Tales of Baghdad, which serves more as short stories in the game. They're also, to me, not super compelling and pretty rare compared to what you find in the contracts. Otherwise, we're throwing things back to Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 4, where Ubisoft's love of having you collect random things from feathers to animus fragments is the driving gameplay force here in Mirage. You're gonna do...
Dude, and I love me some old school AC3. It is clunky as hell. And it's clear that it's like that game between AC2 and Revelations and all those games. Between that and Unity and Syndicate, which are the games they wanted to make AC3 into. So AC3 is in this weird middle spot where it doesn't do any of that stuff well, but it's the foundation that led to AC Black Flag and all these other games. But man, it's a trip down memory lane every time I boot it up. Like I played that, I think, sophomore year of high school, maybe. So yeah, that's just immediately a throwback. I kind of love it.
You get ready. Really,
even though it's
really
bad,
exciting stuff.
great.
AC Mirage, you ready for this one? You're gonna run to a historical site and you're gonna hold Y, and you're gonna get a Codex entry. Oh yeah, that's right. Or you're gonna pickpocket a citizen holding an artifact to trade into a store. Or.
I'm sorry. Seeing him try to pickpocket the old lady and then he fails the pickpocket mini game and then just immediately take his sword out to kill her is just funny to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not mature.
You're gonna pickpocket a citizen holding an artifact to trade into a store. Or you're gonna pickpocket someone again, except this time they're gonna be holding a mysterious shard. It is unbelievable to me, truly, wholeheartedly unbelievable to me that we have gone from, and say what you will about these games, I will hear out all criticism throughout this entire franchise. I don't think any of these games are perfect, but to go from, say, the murder mysteries in AC Unity, the whodunit, investigating, questioning people, looking at evidence around the room, going from that, or the gang wars in Syndicate, these very personalized activities that were designed to fit the setting, to this.
I mean, again, I think you're just comparing apples and oranges a bit, because while it's in the same franchise, this is a budget priced, AA budget produced spin-off game. It's not supposed to be directly compared to the main flagship entries in the franchise. It's just not. Like, and I think it's important to acknowledge that.
This isn't what people meant by going back to the roots of Assassin's Creed by any means at all.
I think it was a little bit. Like, I acknowledge, and I fully will agree, I'm glad that they don't make games like this anymore in the same style, but they were trying to appeal to fans of the old games from 10, 15 years ago. And part of that comes with like weird, clunky mechanics. Like, I agree they're clunky and weird, but that's what these old games were known for. And that's what they brought here, because they were trying to evoke that same response, you know? Like, I agree that the murder mystery missions in Unity were interesting. I would say I did not love the gang wars in Syndicate. I didn't love the like faction missions in Odyssey that were reminiscent of that. I didn't love those, but I liked the murder mystery stuff. I liked the black box missions in Unity a lot. Syndicate even had some good ones. But like, again, they were trying to bring a lot of those old school clunky things. You don't have to like it. I mean, I don't think Mirage is for everybody. I think a lot of people will actively dislike it, but to act like it's just baffling and crazy that they've chosen to do that and put it in the game is just weird to me, because like that was the whole pitch. that was the point.
At all. When we said go back to the roots, it meant the very simple thing I said at the top. Can I assassinate anybody? Do I have to be a specific level? No? Great. We're back to the roots, because anyone can die by the hidden blade now. That was all there was to it.
I don't agree that that's all there was to it when people said return to the roots. I think the impression is that social stealth will be a big element of mission structures. I think they would hope to see recreations of actual cities that you can explore, actual assassination missions, not just go smash somebody with a hammer. Things like the notoriety system, all of that stuff is what they expected when they said return to the roots. I don't think all they meant by return to the roots was just add one-shot assassinations and that's all we're looking for. Because that was even something you could turn on in the settings of Valhalla. Sorry. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I think if that's all you meant by return to the roots, you could just, with a toggle of a switch in the menus, you could make Valhalla a return to the basics. Could you? Yeah. It was like an option for one-shot assassinations, or one-hit assassinations or something like that. I forget how they phrased it, but you could turn it on in the menus. Yeah. I don't know if it was there at launch, but you could.
But they went into the direction of side activity mirroring the original in its mundane nature, and it drives me up a wall, because this could have been so much more personalized, so much better, but it's passionately boring. I can't even call it busy work, because you're not even busy. You're literally just running from point A to point B. It's not bad, as I said, just boring, which is oftentimes way worse. Now, the core gameplay of Assassin's Creed Mirage is fine on a mechanical level, but the design fails it, as I'm going to break down here. You'll crawl through fairly tight levels, whistling down guards and plucking them into haystacks as you veer closer to your ultimate target. This is simple, good old Assassin's Creed, right? No. There is a new token system in the game, which is a currency you get from completing the aforementioned side activities or just pickpocketing them from random NPCs. You can spend these tokens on 3 groups of people to have them do your bidding during missions, such as convincing a group of mercenaries to attack some guards to give you a clear entrance into a location, since the guards will now be quite preoccupied.
Social stealth, social distractions. Like, one of my favorite things to do in old school Assassin's Creed games was, like, in AC2, you go and hire like the ladies of the night. What did they call them? I forget the name of them, like the name of the actual like subgroup. Oh, that's gonna drive me crazy. Somebody in chat. tell me. Oh, I can't remember what they called them. But like you could, the courtesans, yes, the courtesans, yes. You hire the courtesans to go and like cause distractions for you. Dude, it was so great. It was so great. But in this game, like you can also do it with mercenaries. There's missions where you'll hire merchants to do it for you. Like that's part of return to form. That's part of return to the basics, the roots, because that was a big element of social stealth in those old school Assassin's Creed games.
Upon gaining entry, you'll be met with what may feel like some of the worst level design you've seen this year, but it's actually a much bigger problem in my eyes. As I said, the areas in this game are tighter, lacking much in the way of open doors or windows to crawl through, so there's not much interiors to break things up, so you're on the outside constantly, and this crams you down very specific paths, and in many instances, these locations are also bloated to the brim with guards. So what's going to happen? Oh
no, he's using the teleport. This is that mechanic I mentioned in my review that's here that I pretty much ignored because it's basically a like a cheat code. Oh, he has the 5 charges. Yeah, I didn't upgrade it past the 2 basically because I didn't want to use it. Because it basically makes it so at any point you can just hold down the right stick basically and then teleport and immediately one-shot assassinate anybody. And I personally think it just breaks the game, which is why I didn't use it. I think it's really... if they cut it out of the game, I think the game would be better for it, frankly. But that's beside the point. The level design, I don't think it's on the level of what I was hoping for. I don't think there's as many options for entering and assassinating targets and stuff as I was hoping for. But I would not say it's among the worst level design of the year. I wouldn't go that far.
Guard. So what's going to happen before you tell me skill issue? Things are going to end up one of 2 ways, all right? Get ready for it. Number 1, you'll either cheese the assassination of half a dozen guards in the same wagon as you watch the AI break before your eyes, which I don't think is very fun, or you're going to get caught and are forced to engage in the game's combat system. Now, combat in AC Mirage is serviceable, I would call it. You have a heavy attack, a light attack with parry and dodging being used to defend yourself, depending on what color the enemy glows. If it's red, get out of the way and dodge, and if it's a bright light, then go ahead and parry, and you can insta-kill enemies that you parry with proper timing. There isn't much in the way of a warm-up animation to give you time to react, and so it's a far cry, pardon the pun, away from the days of auto-counter killing everyone like we used to up until Assassin's Creed Origins. So yeah, this isn't the way to play the game, even with all the upgrades that you can get from the blacksmith. It's just not how the game wants you to play, which is fine because you're an assassin, right? But this is what I mean about the design failing the game. None of these components are poor on an individual level. They all work fine. But when the areas are too small and overpopulated and the combat is deliberately not fleshed out so that you are, as an assassin would be, more proficient in the shadows, it becomes a very vicious cycle of running away anytime you're caught or just breaking the game. And this doesn't account for like little design problems, such as mapping the assassination button to the attack button. So the amount of times I swung on someone that I didn't want to swing on because I wanted to just take them out, but then it engaged in combat, my notoriety went up, and then guards were chasing me, I had to hide. It's almost too reminiscent of the bad parts of core AC games.
First thing, I'll agree that it's freaking dumb they routed the assassination button to the melee attack button. I agree that was a dumb move. They should have routed it to Y, which is their interact button. Easy peasy fix, lemon squeezy. I think you can actually change it in the settings. I think you can do that yourself. People have also rerouted the free running button from A. They reroute it to right trigger, so it's like old school Assassin's Creed games. You hold down right trigger to free run. So you can also do that. But like what he just said here, I mean, again, is I think just where it's just a difference of opinion. It's just a difference in what you were looking for. And it's why expectations are important.
It's almost too reminiscent of the bad parts of core AC games.
It's almost too reminiscent of the bad parts of core, old core Assassin's Creed games. I mean, it's just, I think for some people, they were just hoping for old school Assassin's Creed elements to be brought, good and bad, because they wanted the throwback. And if you weren't looking for that, if you just wanted certain parts of old school games to be brought back, then yeah, you're probably not going to love Mirage. But that's, whether you agree or not, that's what a lot of people were looking for, was to have those old clunky things, the kind of weird sit in the hay bale and just come and pluck people out slowly but surely, and then throw the smoke bomb, assassinate everybody really quickly and get out. That's what some people, a lot of old school fans were looking for from Mirage. And that's why for them, this game is exactly what they were hoping for, and they're having a really good time with it. If you're hoping, like, he's made a handful of comparisons to like AC, Syndicate, and Unity, and Valhalla, and those games. And again, it's just, those are $70 or $60 at the time games that were the flagship titles for that year. And this is a budget priced, budget produced game that was initially a DLC, and it plays like it, which thank God it's cheaper and it's not $70. But I think it's important to acknowledge that and point that out. I don't think it's a fair comparison directly. Muhammad, so you okay with bad things? Even here, it doesn't make any sense. What I'm saying is that bringing back old school design mechanics and just old school designs from those older Assassin's Creed games means also including some stuff that by modern standards is not ideal or is even bad. Stuff like the really, really simplified melee combat, stuff like the hyper streamlined progression systems and things that by a lot of people's standards nowadays is just not acceptable in a like full price AAA game. But for a budget priced game that's supposed to be a throwback to old school games, I think it's tolerable. It's not that big of a deal. In the same way, like earlier in the stream, we were trying that RoboCop demo, and it's clunky. It's got weird stuff that is, I mean, it's kind of a throwback to games from like 15, 20 years ago, like those old licensed movie games. And it's clunky and weird, but at a decreased price, understanding that it's a budget title that was produced by a AA team or a smaller team, you can excuse that type of thing. Not every game has to be a masterpiece or perfect. Like there's a certain allowable amount of clunk or issues. In the same way, like I don't think it's fair to dismiss something like Starfield because the people's faces look kind of dead. And I don't think it's fair to dismiss it wholeheartedly because of like load screens being everywhere or lack of vehicles. You can combine all these things, stack them up and be like, hey, for full price, maybe this doesn't make sense anymore. I think that's how you can tie all these things together. But more broadly, like it's just going to be a difference of tastes. If you're approaching Mirage and trying to review it as like the next chapter in Assassin's Creed for flagship release, yeah, I don't think you're going to look at it and have nice things to say about it or want to recommend it to anybody. But if you look at it as a budget DLC turned into a budget release, then all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense. And when it was built to try and give old school fans something that's a throwback, I think in that capacity it's very successful. But it depends on how you approach it. If you approach it like a throwback game that's going to bring the clunk good and bad to a modern game, or if you approach it as like, okay, let's see if they can keep up with Starfield and Cyberpunk, like, yeah, of course you're gonna have bad things to say.
Feels like it's blowing those ones up out of proportion and not focusing on what made the series special, but it all comes back down to design. It's fine if the levels are much smaller and have less exploration. It's fine if you want to pack a particular area full of guards. It's fine if you want Basim to not be this character that's super proficient in combat and you could only take on 3 guards at a time. That's all fine individually, but when you put them together is when the problems really start to roll in. Now, one of the better additions to locations that you'll infiltrate in this game is a marksman that'll shoot down your eagle companion, so you can't tag an entire location of enemies and crawl through without really thinking at all. It actually gave me this goal of, okay, I need to find the marksman, take him out, and then I'll start surveying the area. It forces you to go in blind. It forces some discomfort, which again can fuel those design issues I'm talking about. But when it works, you can see the vision, you can see the intent and what they were trying to avoid, which is what we did in so many Assassin's Creed games. Throw the bird up in the sky, ping, 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 ping. Okay, I know where everybody is. I'm going to take them all out and then just run around this area like it's nobody's business. Fortunately, you do have some useful tools in these locations to use, from throwing knives.
Yeah, I also like the marksman. Sure, but UB is still going to push it as a standalone title. If you're not in this sphere, it'll get judged against its peers. I mean, it's a standalone title because they're selling it individually, but it's at a discounted price. It's not a full-priced game, which is like one of the broader points, is that this is not a flagship Assassin's Creed game. It is a spin-off, fun little experiment, return to roots game. And in that capacity, it's successful. But if you view it as a flagship title, as like the sequel to Valhalla, yeah, you're going to be like, what the hell is this crap? You know?
to teleporting to assassinate multiple enemies at once, although you don't get all of this immediately. Progression is tied to certain story beats rather than XP, where you'll unlock tool upgrades alongside skills within a skill tree. Now, there are 3 skill trees here, and the upgrades in some instances are valuable, but in others, it just exists to give you some sort of feeling of progression, which this game is severely lacking. Like, your whole predator tree involving your eagle is like, hey, you can ping targets. Now you can ping targets a little quicker. I'm like, that's a worthless upgrade, man. They're taking little slivers of the game and divvying them up even further into breadcrumbs and just dripping them throughout an artificial skill system here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The skill tree is like extremely forgettable. It's really bad. So I agree there. But I mean, again, old school Assassin's Creed games didn't have a lot of progression beyond tool acquisition and health upgrades and stuff. So I guess in that capacity, it's a throwback as well.
Useful ones like, oh, chain assassination, great, I love that. But much like what I think Core AC did really well is giving you tools or doing missions to unlock these upgrades instead of throwing them into a skill tree. I've said this many times before, this isn't just an Assassin's Creed problem, it isn't just a Ubisoft problem. We don't need skill trees in every single game.
Totally agree. I don't mind having, like, one of my favorite things in Syndicate is that a lot of your like coolest tools are gathered and gained through story beats and cutscenes and stuff, where you'll like go meet with what's his name, Alexander Graham Bell, is that his name? You go meet with him and he builds the rope caster for you and then builds this tool for you, and you see how him like experiment with it. Then you do a mission where he's helping you calibrate it and stuff. Like, I love that way more than just, oh, you bought it in a menu, congratulations, or oh, you got this extra capacity in a skill tree selection. Like, I'd rather go and actually do a mission with the guy that helped design it and stuff. I love that way more. I just hope to see people not give it a pass because it's not demanding much. I prefer 75 to 80% of the reviews to cover the content for what it is. Then the remaining can be nuanced on price and stuff. Oh, it's like recover mechanics and stuff, you mean? Yeah, I could see that. I think Mirage was always going to be like high 70s, low 80s at best in terms of reviews, just because of what it was trying to do. But I do think that old school, and I mean, I'm seeing this in our community of people that really enjoy Assassin's Creed stuff. I'm seeing them respond really well. And they're like, yeah, no, it's not a game of the year contender at all. It's got a lot of clunk and a lot of stuff I'd even call bad. But for what they were looking for, a trip down memory lane, it's successful. And I'm glad that they're enjoying it. I mean, that was the whole point. When's the last time we had an Assassin's Creed game that came out and people are just like, yeah, I'm having fun. And that's it. They're like, acknowledge it's not amazing. It's not trying to be game of the year or anything. It's just trying to do this kind of small niche thing, which is to build a game like one from 12, 13 years ago. And in that capacity, it kind of works.
Now, there are moments that these tools are used in really cool ways, especially the teleport ability, letting you sometimes access areas you otherwise shouldn't have been able to just due to a guard's placement where you'll assassinate him and suddenly you're on top of a tower.
And I freaking hate it. I think it's terrible. I think that mechanic is lazy, and if you are going to play this game, I would actually heavily encourage you not to use it. Like the way the devs described it was that it's supposed to be their like representation for Basim being so fast and powerful as an assassin that he can actually cause the Animus systems to like glitch out, which is how he teleports around. But like Maddie just said, there's occasions where they'll just teleport like up a tower they couldn't normally reach, which doesn't make any sense if it's how he's just like faster now. He can just fly all of a sudden. Like, I don't like it. It tears me out. Maybe you don't mind, whatever. I mean, good for you if it doesn't bug you. I'm glad. But man, it tears me out every time.
That type of stuff is where you see the open-ended gameplay and how the tools could flourish if we expanded the power set a little bit more, which is something I just, at my heart, I don't.
Yeah, they should have fully animated. Well, just even look at Batman Arkham Knight with the fear takedowns. That's basically this, but you see him very quickly shift around and like crawl around and zip around corners and stuff to get to the next target. Like, that to me works way better than this. That just completely dodges the frustration, which is that people feel like this is just a magic ability, basically, to let him teleport and fly, which is why people are calling it a teleportation ability. Like, just have him do the master assassin takedown where he can do this and then show it, you know? It'd be very, very easy.
Feel fits AC well are these random abilities that are starting to show up. But it just goes to show that opening up that tool set more, opening up the levels more, could have made all the difference in this game. You can upgrade these tools with materials gathered from contracts that I mentioned before, or chests in the open world. Each piece of gear has 3 tiers that have unique upgrades, which you can only select one of per tier. So if I have a throwing knife and I unlock the tier 1 upgrade, you can only select one of the 3 upgrade options available there. It's not like you bring more materials in there. All of those upgrades are available, but you can only equip one. I actually like this system a lot, especially because the throwing knives eventually can make your enemies dissolve as an option, or you can kill heavy armored enemies. That is a really good sort of gameplay choice there, because both of those are incredibly useful. You can take anyone out quietly and no one's going to know they were.
There's also a way that you can get them to, I think, select 2 of the first tier upgrades as well. So there is some variability there.
Or you can take anyone out whatsoever, but the bodies are going to be there, and you make.
So you don't mind the function, just the presentation of it? Yes, but specifically, I don't like that he can teleport to places he couldn't otherwise get to. Like, if you could quickly climb up the tower and assassinate the target and that's how you get up there, okay, but the fact that like he can just instantaneously teleport to another building over there because you happen to highlight him and then he just teleports right over there, I don't like that. I would rather it be something like the fear takedown system in Arkham Knight, where you're still bound by the laws of physics, you know, but it's just a super powerful ability of Batman's to take these guys out very, very quickly, you know.
They alert the guards. I found the dissolving more worthwhile, but you may find that taking out heavy enemies is much more worthwhile to you. So again, like, there are these moments of, I see the options and I like what you're doing here, and the tool upgrades are one of those bright spots. That said, and this is just me being very much a critic here, I do think the tools were handled this way with the very light upgrades strictly because the game doesn't have anything else to evolve what the Mirage experience is. These tools, from traps to blow darts, could have easily been handed off very early to you, with more noteworthy improvements down the stretch to the gameplay experience like I had mentioned, but it does very little beyond what you've already seen of the game, which leads to a stagnant main character and a stagnant gameplay experience that can oftentimes get frustrating. There is a lot of...
I would agree. It can feel stagnant for sure. I think that they definitely gate how many tools you can unlock at a time because they want to give you a sense of progression, which is how they used to do it. I mean, again, they used to do things that way, where most Assassin's Creed games, like in 3, I think you get the rope caster after like 10 hours or something. It's a while before you get that. So this is nothing new, again, for old school Assassin's Creed games. This is what they were trying to do. I understand by modern standards you don't really like it, but like, it's part of what they were trying to do. Mirage, thank you for the 2 months as well, excluding the fact that the ability, which I have only used once where it was required. Let's see, game as lit, and I complete it in 30 hours, or game is lit. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, or did enjoy it. And I just think like this whole review from Matty, I think is well done. I think he's pointing out a lot of really good stuff and reasons why some of these things aren't done anymore. And there are problems, like straight up serious problems, like the AI is not where it should be for a game that targets stealth. Variability of options and tactical options and pathways in missions is a serious problem. I think there should be a lot more than just what we have in the game, which is usually like 2 or 3 paths that all converge to the same point right at the end of a mission. So I think that could be improved a lot. I think that there's like pacing issues. I think tone issues within the story, characters that are uninteresting. I think that could all be improved. Certainly. I just think like the one thing that is silly to bring up as a frustration for Mirage is that it feels too much like the old school games, because that is precisely what they were going for. Like, to criticize it for that is actually a compliment, because that is exactly what they were trying to do. That's my only frustration with this review so far. Everything else I think is totally fair and very valid, and I will agree with you on. But to say that certain things feel too much like old school Assassin's Creed games, to me is like, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those like, nada. Like, that's exactly what we were trying to do. Like, what? Yes. And it's why some people got like frustrated where they went like, people on launch day or embargo day, they were like, I feel like if people started asking for like to bring back a Black Flag and reboot Black Flag or to do a sequel to it, people would then be frustrated that they had run out of ideas and were going back to do the old thing once again. You know, I do think there is a certain element of people never being happy, you know, that is certainly palpable. But I think more than anything, it's probably a reflection of just confusion on the marketing, where people are perceiving this as like the next Assassin's Creed game. And even little things that were said here, which I tried to point out, like the statement that the franchise is returning to its origins. It might have been just a slip of the tongue or something, but that's not actually accurate. The franchise isn't returning to its foundations and its roots. It's this particular game. This individual entry is returning to its roots. Everything else is kind of operating as normal. Nearridge, thank you also for the super chat. What do you think about the game? Did you complete it? I know you ripped Valhalla into shreds, which it did deserve, obviously, but this one I think was a step in the right direction from the old games. I think having finished it, I'm assuming you're talking about Mirage, having finished it and messed around with it a lot on the ROG Ally, just in bed at the hotel and like in the Airbnb, I had fun with it. There's again a lot of clunk, a lot of jank. I think it reminded me of why I liked those older Assassin's Creed games that targeted stealth, but I think it was still like there was more that they could have brought back from those. Like one of my favorite things when I go back to, say, Unity or Syndicate are the historical characters and the really colorful characters that you meet throughout the main story that maybe give you upgrades, they give you missions, all of that stuff. And I felt like there wasn't a single interesting, like truly interesting character in the whole of Mirage's story. Everybody you meet is just, it's like they have the flu. Everybody is talking like they just got out of the DMV. Everybody is just super mellow and of a flat affect. And it's hard for me to get like really engaged in a story when I feel like everybody around me is just like, it's time to take on the next target. Let's go. You know, I need a little bit more than that, something. Yeah, I think maybe a great example of when it's done well is like the opening of AC2. I think the opening of AC2 justifies the story really well. It humanizes the protagonist. It makes it clear what your goals are. It motivates the gameplay for dozens of hours if need be. I think that makes a lot of sense to do something like that. But in Mirage, the whole premise of the story from the earliest outset was initially an interest in joining the Hidden Ones for like doing something great or doing something bigger than us. And then, of course, let's just say something happens early in the main story of Mirage that pushes Basim to go and do it. But they didn't spend enough time establishing any of those relationships before the bad thing happens. So it doesn't really hit you very hard because they're just like friends of his. It's the same exact thing that happened with the opening of Immortals of Avium. Immortals of Avium had the exact same thing happen. So I think there's just a handful of things that could have been done differently or changed and tweaked. But it reminded me of why I liked those old school Assassin's Creed games in a good way, I think. He took my thing.